Chapter 16. The caller, Mr. Pilgrim, had said to Sarah that he might call again on the following afternoon. At FBI headquarters, certain arrangements were made to receive the call. Who was Mr. Pilgrim? Not Lecter. Crawford had made sure of that. Was Mr. Pilgrim the Tooth Fairy? Maybe so, Crawford thought. The desks and telephones from Crawford's office had been moved overnight to a larger room across the hall. Graham stood in the open doorway of a soundproof booth. Behind him in the booth was Crawford's telephone. Sarah had cleaned it with Windex. With a voice print spectrograph, tape recorders, and stress evaluator taking up most of her desk, and another desk beside it, and Beverly Katz sitting in her chair, Sarah needed something to do. The big clock on the wall showed 10 minutes before noon. Dr. Alan Bloom and Crawford stood with Graham. They had adopted a sideline stance, hands in their pockets. A technician seated across from Beverly Katz drummed his fingers on the desk until a frown from Crawford stopped him. Crawford's desk was cluttered with 2 new telephones, an open line to the Bell Systems Electronic Switching Center, or ESS, and a hotline to the FBI communications room. How much time do you need for a trace? Dr. Bloom asked. With a new switch, and it's a lot quicker than most people think, Crawford said. Maybe a minute if it comes through all electronic switching. More if it's from some place where they have to swarm the frame. Crawford raised his voice to the room. If he calls at all, it'll be short, so let's play him perfect. Want to go over the drill, Will? Sure. When we get to the point where I talk, I want to ask you a couple of things, Doctor. Bloom had arrived after the others. He was scheduled to speak to the behavioral science section at Quantico later in the day. Bloom could smell 𝘠𝘷𝘦 on Graham's clothing. Okay, Graham said. Telephone rings. The circuit's completed immediately and the trace starts at ESS. But the tone generator continues the ringing noise, so he doesn't know we've picked it up. That gives us about 20 seconds to him. He pointed to the technician. Tone generator to off at the end of the 4th ring. Got it? The technician nodded. End of the 4th ring. Now, Beverly picks up the phone. Her voice is different from the one he heard yesterday. No recognition in the voice. Beverly sounds bored. He asks for me. Bev says, I'll have to page him. May I put you on hold? Ready for that, Bev? Graham thought it would be better not to rehearse the lines. They might sound flat by route. All right. The line is open to us, dead to him. I think he'll hold out longer than he'll talk. Sure you don't want to give him the hold music? The technician asked. Hell no, Crawford said. We give him about 20 seconds of hold. Then Beverly comes back on and tells him, Mr. Graham's coming to the phone. I'll connect you now. I pick up. Graham turned to Dr. Bloom. How would you play him, Doctor? He'll expect you to be skeptical about it really being him. I'd give him some polite skepticism. I'd make him a strong distinction between the nuisance of fake callers and the significance, the importance of a call from the real person. The fakes are easy to recognize because they lack the capacity to understand what has happened, that sort of thing. Make him tell something to prove who he is. Dr. Bloom looked at the floor and kneaded the back of his neck. You don't know what he wants. Maybe he wants understanding. Maybe he's fixed on you as the advisor he wants to 𝘰𝘠𝘠𝘪𝘴. We'll see. Try to pick up his mood and give him what he's after, a little at a time. I'd be very leery of appealing to him to come to us for help, unless you sense he's asking for it. If he's paranoid, you'll pick it up fast. In that case, I'd play into his suspicion or grievance. Let him air it. If he gets rolling on that, he may forget how long he's talked. That's all I know to tell you. Bloom put his hand on Graham's shoulder and spoke quietly. Listen, this is not a pep talk or any bullshit. You can take him over the jumps. Never mind advice. Do what seems right to you. Waiting. Half an hour of silence was enough. Call or no call, we've got to decide where to go from here. Crawford said, Want to try the mail drop? I can't see anything better. Graham said, That would give us 2 baits, the stakeout at your house and the keys and the drop. The telephone was ringing. Tone generator on. At ESS, the trace began. 4 rings. The technician hit the switch, and Beverly picked up. Sarah was listening. Special Agent Crawford's office. Sarah shook her head. She knew the caller, one of Crawford's cronies at Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. Beverly got him off in a hurry and stopped the trace. Everyone in the FBI building knew to keep the line clear. Crawford went over the details of the mail drop again. They were bored and tense at the same time. Lloyd Bowman came around to show them how the number of pairs in Lecter's Scriptures Fit page 100 of the softcover Joy of Cooking. Sarah passed around coffee and paper cups. The telephone was ringing. The tone generator took over, and at ESS, the trace began. 4 rings. The technician hit the switchboard. Beverly picked up. Special Agent Crawford's office. Sarah nodding her head. Big nods. Graham went to his booth and closed the door. He could see Beverly's lips moving. She punched hold and watched the second hand on the wall clock. Graham could see his face in the polished receiver, 2 bloated faces in the earpiece and mouthpiece. He could smell cordite from the firing range in his shirt. Don't hang up. Sweet Jesus, don't hang up. 40 seconds had lapsed. The telephone moved slightly on his table when it rang. Let it ring. 1 more. 45 seconds. Now. This is Will Graham. How can I help you? Low laughter. A muffled voice. I expect you can. Could I ask who's calling, please? Didn't your secretary tell you? No, but she did call me out of a meeting, sir, and if you tell me you won't talk to Mr. Pilgrim, I'll hang up right now. Yes or no? Mr. Pilgrim, if you have some problem I'm equipped to deal with, I'll be glad to talk with you. I think you have the problem, Mr. Graham. Sorry, I didn't understand you. The second hand crawled toward 1 minute. You've been a busy boy, haven't you? The caller said. Too busy to stay on the phone unless you state your business. My business is in the same place as yours, Atlanta and Birmingham. Do you know something about that? Soft laughter. Know something about it? Are you interested in Mr. Pilgrim? Yes or no? I'll hang up if you lie. Graham could see Crawford through the glass. He had a telephone receiver in each hand. Yes, but see, I get a lot of calls, and most of them are from people who say they know things. 1 minute. Crawford put one receiver down and scrawled on a piece of paper. You'd be surprised how many pretenders there are, Graham said. Talk to them a few minutes and you can tell they don't have the capacity to even understand what's going on. Do you? Sarah held a sheet of paper to the glass for Graham to see. It said, Chicago phone booth, PD scrambling. I'll tell you what. You tell me one thing you know about Mr. Pilgrim, and maybe I'll tell you whether you're right or not. The muffled voice said. Let's get straight to who we're talking about, Graham said. We're talking about Mr. Pilgrim. How do I know Mr. Pilgrim has done anything I'm interested in? Has he? Let's say yes. Are you Mr. Pilgrim? I don't think I'll tell you that. Are you his friend? Sort of. Well, prove it then. Tell me something that shows me how well you know him. You first. You show me yours. A nervous giggle. First time you're wrong, I'll hang up. All right. Mr. Pilgrim is right-handed. That's a safe guess. Most people are. Mr. Pilgrim is misunderstood. No general crap, please. Mr. Pilgrim is really strong physically. Yes, you could say that. Graham looked at the clock. 1.5 minutes. Crawford nodded encouragement. Don't tell him anything he could change. Mr. Pilgrim is white and about, say, 5'11". You haven't told me anything you know. I'm not sure you even know him at all. Want to stop talking? No, but you said we'd trade. I was just going along with you. Do you think Mr. Pilgrim is crazy? Bloom was shaking his head. I don't think anybody who is so careful as he is to be considered crazy. I think he's different. I think a lot of people do believe he's crazy. And the reason for that is he hasn't let people understand much about him. Describe exactly what you think he did to Mrs. Leeds, and maybe I'll tell you if you're right or not. I don't want to do that. Goodbye. Graham's heart jumped, but he could still hear breathing on the other end. I can't go into that until I know. Graham heard the telephone booth door slam open in Chicago and the receiver fall with a clank. Faint voices and bangs as the receiver swung on its cord. Everyone in the office heard it on the speakerphone. Freeze! Don't even twitch. Now lock your fingers behind your head and back out of the booth slowly. Slowly. Hands on the glass and spread them. Sweet relief was flooding Graham. I'm not Armstand. You'll find my ID in my breast pocket. That tickles. A confused voice loud on the telephone. Who am I speaking to? Will Graham, FBI. This is Sergeant Stanley Riddle, Chicago Police Department. Irritated now. Would you tell me what the hell is going on? You tell me. You have a man in custody? Damn right. Freddie Lowndes, the reporter. I've known him for 10 years. Here's your notebook, Freddie. Are you preferring charges against him? Graham's face was pale. Crawford's was red. Dr. Bloom watched the tape reels go around. Can you hear me? Yes, I'm preferring charges. Graham's voice was strangled. Obstruction of justice. Please take him in and hold him for the U.S. Attorney. Suddenly, Lowndes was on the telephone. He spoke fast and clearly with the cotton wads out of his cheeks. Will, listen. Tell it to the U.S. Attorney. Put Sergeant Riddle on the phone. I know something. Put Riddle on the goddamn telephone. Crawford's voice came on the line. Let me have it, Will. Graham slammed his receiver down with a bang that made everyone in the range of the speakerphone flinch. He came out of the booth and left the room without looking at anyone. Lowndes, you have hobbled hell, my man. Crawford said. You want to catch him or not, I can help you. Let me talk 1 minute. Lowndes hurried into Crawford's silence. Listen, you just showed me how bad you need the Tattler. Before, I wasn't sure. Now I am. The ad's part of the Tooth Fairy case, or you wouldn't have gone balls out to nail this call. Great. The Tattler's here for you. Anything you want. How'd you find out? The ad manager came to me, said your Chicago office sent this suit of clothes over to check the ads. Your guy took 5 letters from the incoming ads. Said it was pursuant to mail fraud. Mail fraud nothing. The ad manager made Xerox copies of the letters and envelopes before he let your guy have them. I looked them over. I knew he took 5 letters to Smoke Screen, the one he really wanted. Took a day or 2 to check them all out. The answer was on the envelope. Chesapeake postmark. The postage meter number was for Chesapeake State Hospital. I was there, you know, behind your friend with the wild hair up his ass. What else could it be? I had to be sure, though. That's why I called, to see if you'd come down on Mr. Pilgrim with both feet, and you did. You made a large mistake, Freddie. You need the Tattler, and I can open it up for you. Ads, editorial, monitoring incoming mail, anything. You name it. I can be discreet, I can. cut me in, Crawford." "There's nothing to cut you in on." "Okay, then it won't make a difference if somebody happened to put in 6 personal ads next issue, all to Mr. Pilgrim and signed the same way." "I'll get an injunction slapped on you and a sealed indictment for obstruction of justice." "And it might leak to every paper in the county." Lowndes knew he was talking on tape. He didn't care anymore. "I swear to God, Crawford, I'll do it. I'll tear up your chance before I lose mine." Add interstate transmission of a threatening message to what I just said. "Let me help you, Jack. I can, believe me." "Run along to the police station, Freddie. Now, put the sergeant back on the phone." Freddie Lowndes' Lincoln Versailles smelled of hair tonic and aftershave, socks and cigars, and the police sergeant was glad to get out of it when they reached the station house. Lowndes knew the captain commanding the precinct and many of the patrolmen. The captain gave Lowndes coffee and called the U.S. Attorney's office to try and clear this shit up. No federal marshal came for Lowndes. In half an hour, he took a call from Crawford in the precinct commander's office. Then he was free to go. The captain walked him to his car. Lowndes was keyed up, and his driving was fast and jerky as he crossed the loop eastward to his apartment overlooking Lake Michigan. There were several things he wanted out of this story, and he knew he could get them. Money was one, and most of that would come from the paperback. He would have an instant paperback on the stands 36 hours after the capture. An exclusive story in the daily press would be a news cop. He would have the satisfaction of seeing the straight press, the Chicago Tribune, the Los Angeles Times, the sanctified Washington Post, and the holy New York Times run his copyrighted material under his byline with his picture credentials. And then the correspondents of those August journals who looked down on him, who would not drink with him, could eat their fucking hearts out. Lowndes was a pariah to them because he had taken a different faith. Had he been incompetent, a fool with no resource, the veterans of the straight press could have forgiven him for working on the Tattler, as one forgives a retarded geek. But Lowndes was good. He had the qualities of a good reporter: intelligence, guts, and the good eye. He had great energy and patience. Against him were the fact that he was obnoxious and therefore disliked by news executives, and his inability to keep himself out of his stories. In Lowndes was the longing need to be noticed that is often miscalled ego. Lowndes was lumpy and ugly and small. He had buck teeth, and his rat eyes had the sheen of spit on asphalt. He had worked in a straight journalism for 10 years when he realized that no one would ever send him to the White House. He saw that his publishers would wear his legs out, use him until it was time for him to become a broken down old drunk manning a desk end that is dead, drifting inevitably towards cirrhosis or a mattress fire. They wanted the information he could get, but they didn't want Freddie. They paid him top scale, which is not very much money if you have to buy women. They patted his back and told him he had a lot of balls, and they refused to put his name on a parking place. One evening in 1969, while in the office working rewrite, Freddie had an epiphany. Frank Larkin was seated near him, taking dictation on the telephone. Dictation was the glue factory for old reporters on the paper where Freddie worked. Frank Larkin was 55, but he looked 70. He was oyster-eyed, and he went to his locker every half hour for a drink. Freddie could smell him from where he sat. Larkin got up and shuffled over to the slot and spoke in a hoarse whisper to the news editor, a woman. Freddie always listened to other people's conversations. Larkin asked the woman to get him a Kotex from the machine in the ladies' room. He had to use them on his bleeding behind. Freddie stopped typing. He took the story out of his typewriter, replaced the paper, and wrote a letter of resignation. A week later, he was working for the 𝘈𝘚. He started as cancer editor at a salary nearly double what he had earned before. Management was impressed with his attitude. The 𝘈𝘚 could afford to pay him well because the paper found cancer very lucrative. 1 in 5 Americans dies from it. The relatives of the dying, worn out, prayed out, trying to fight a raging carcinoma with pets and banana pudding and copper-tasting jokes are desperate for anything hopeful. Marketing surveys showed that a bold new cure for cancer, or cancer miracle drug, covered line-boosted supermarket sales of any 𝘈𝘚 issued by 22.3%. There was a 6th percentile drop in those sales when the story ran on page 1 beneath the cover line, as the reader had time to scan the empty text while the groceries were being totaled. Marketing experts discovered it was better to have the big cover line in color on the front and play the story in the middle of the pages, where it was difficult to hold the paper open and manage a purse and grocery cart at the same time. The standard story featured an optimistic 5 paragraphs in 10-point type, then a drop to 8-point type, then to 6-point before mentioning that the quote-unquote miracle drug was unavailable or that animal research was just beginning. Freddie earned his money turning them out, and the stories stole a lot of 𝘈𝘚s. In addition to increased readership, there were many spin-off sales of miracle medallions, and healing cloths. Manufacturers of these paid a premium to get their ads located close to the weekly cancer story. Many readers wrote to the paper for more information. Some additional revenue was realized by selling their names to a radio evangelist, a screaming sociopath who wrote to them for money, using envelopes stamped, "Someone you love will die unless..." Freddie Lowndes was good for the 𝘈𝘚, and the 𝘈𝘚 was good for him. Now, after 11 years with the paper, he earned $72,000 a year. You know, that's not much nowadays, but, you know, it's sad to acknowledge that. He carried pretty much what he pleased and spent the money trying to have a good time. He lived as well as he knew how to live. The way things were developing, he believed he could raise the ante on his paperback deal, and there was movie interest. He heard that Hollywood was a fine place for obnoxious fellows with money. Freddie felt good. He shot down the ramp to the underground garage in his building and wheeled into his parking space with a spirited squeal of rubber. There on the wall was his name in letters a foot high, marketing his private spot, Mr. Freddie Lowndes. Wendy was here already. Her Datsun was parked next to his spot. Good. He wished he could take her to Washington with him. That would make those flat feet's eyes pop. He whistled in the elevator on his way up. Wendy was packing for him. She had lived out of suitcases, and she did a good job. Neat in her jeans and plaid shirt, her brown hair gathered in a chipmunk tail on her neck. She might have been a farm girl except for her pallor and her shape. Wendy's figure was almost a caricature of puberty. She looked at Lowndes with eyes that had not registered surprise in years. She saw that he was trembling. "You're working too hard, Rasco." She liked to call him Rasco, and it pleased him for some reason. "What are you taking? The 6 o'clock shuttle?" She brought him a drink and moved her sequined jumpsuit and wig's case off the bed so he could lay down. "I could take you to the airport. I'm not going to the club until 6. Wendy City was her own topless bar, and she didn't have to dance anymore. Lowndes had co-signed the note. "You sounded like Morocco Mo when you called me," she said. "Who?" "You know, on television Saturday morning. He's real mysterious, and he helps Secret Squirrel. He watched it when you had the flu. You really pulled one off today, didn't you? You're really pleased with yourself." "Damn straight. I took a chance today, baby, and it paid off. I've got a chance at something sweet." "You've got time for a nap before you go. You're running yourself in the ground." Lowndes lit a cigarette. He already had one burning in the ashtray. "You know what?" she said. "I bet if you drink your drink and get it off, you could get to sleep." Lowndes' face, like a fist pressed against her neck, relaxed at last, became mobile as suddenly as a fist became a hand. His trembling stopped. He told her all about it, whispering into the buck jut of her augmented breasts. She tracing 8s on the back of his neck with a finger. "That is some kind of smart Rasco," she said. "You go to sleep now. I'll get you up for the plane. It'll be all right, all of it. And then we'll have a high old time." They whispered about the places they would go. He went to sleep.